The restaurant only had 7 chairs at the table, and I was the 8th person standing. They all noticed. No one moved. Mallory looked up from her drink, smirked like I was late, I was 5 minutes early, and said, "You can pull one from another table." Her friends chuckled. Some politely, some not. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, scanning the faces of women I'd seen only through selfies on her phone. The ones she captioned Queen's Nail Polish medium skin tone and my wolf's kiss mark. One of them actually raised her glass to toast before I sat down. "Here's to freedom," she said, laughing. I hadn't even taken off my jacket yet. It was a brunch I hadn't asked to be invited to. A last-minute text the night before. "Come tomorrow. It'll be fun. Dress decent." So I did. I wore the shirt she used to love. The one with the tiny pineapples. She once said it made me look weird but safe. Now she barely glanced at it. Then, midway through the overpriced avocado something, while I was still deciding whether I should order coffee or just sit in silence, Mallory tapped her spoon against her mimosa glass. Ding, ding, ding. And with that smug glint in her eyes, the one she usually reserved for work meetings or passive-aggressive neighbor chats, she said, "So, slight announcement. Curtis and I are pressing pause. We're doing a break. We both feel it's time." I hadn't said that. In fact, I hadn't been told that. Her friends gasped, cheered. One shouted, "Yes, girl." Another clapped. Actually clapped. I wasn't even looking at her anymore. I was watching the waitress near the corner, quietly observing with a confused brow. She probably thought I'd start flipping tables. But I didn't. I didn't throw a scene or say, "What the hell?" I didn't beg or whisper, "Let's talk outside." I didn't even breathe loudly. I just sat back, pushed my untouched plate forward, and calmly replied, "Perfect. Enjoy your freedom." That's all I said. And just like that, their grins collapsed. You know that awkward sound when a microphone suddenly cuts out? It felt like that, but between people. Forks stopped. Drinks hovered midair. One of them tried to giggle and choked instead. Mallory stared at me like I had ruined something. I stood up. No chair to push in. Remember, they hadn't saved me one. I looked around once, said nothing, and walked out. She didn't follow. None of them did. But the fallout? Oh, it followed. Harder than they ever expected. By the time I reached the parking lot, my hands were shaking, but not from rage. It was that surreal kind of numbness that makes everything too quiet. No cars. No wind. Just me standing next to our SUV, realizing I didn't even know why she invited me in the first place. What was the point of dragging me into that scene? So she could perform? Get laughs? Prove to her new friends that she was liberated from her dull, juice-labeling husband? Whatever it was, it worked for them. But not on me. I sat in the car for a while, not driving. Just staring at the brunch receipt still in my pocket from paying last time. I should have seen it coming. Looking back, the red flags weren't waving, they were on fire. A few weeks earlier, I found a text on her phone from a contact saved as Jay from spin class. He'd sent a selfie, shirtless. She responded with a laughing emoji and nothing else. When I asked who he was, she said, "He's like a puppy. Dumb but adorable. Totally harmless." Funny how she never showed me the dog shelter. But it wasn't about Jay, or even the text. It was the way she'd already started narrating our relationship in past tense. "We used to be fun. You were so spontaneous when we met. It's like I'm married to a tax form. I'm not even an accountant. I manage a climate-controlled storage unit facility." Anyway, I didn't go home that afternoon. Instead, I drove to a hotel off the highway. One of those places where the towels smell like bleach and the vending machine is always out of water. I paid for 3 nights in cash. The woman at the front desk asked, "Are you okay?" I lied. I said, "Just traveling for work." I didn't call Mallory. I didn't message. I didn't update my status or post a quote about self-worth. I just disappeared, quietly, like a shadow slipping off the wall. It took her 8 hours to realize I was gone. At 11:17 p.m., she texted, "You were kinda cold today. Want to talk?" At 12:03 a.m., "Are you at home?" Or, then nothing. Until the next morning. My phone rang. I stared at it for a minute before answering. I didn't speak. Mallory's voice came through, light and falsely chipper. "Hey, so, last night was kinda weird, huh?" The girls didn't mean anything by it. We were just being playful. I wanted to ease the tension, and maybe I did it wrong, but whatever. You're not mad, right? I stayed silent. Then she added, "Like, are you coming home, or should I just give you some space?" I finally spoke, calm as ever. Mallory, you already gave me space. Publicly. With an audience. Then I hung up. She didn't call back. Not immediately, anyway. But I knew that was just the beginning. Because Mallory was used to control, little things, like what we watched, where we ate, who we visited. She always made the plans. I just followed. Until now. And what she didn't realize. This time, I had started planning something. Something she wouldn't be invited to. I didn't check out of the hotel on the third day. I just left the key on the nightstand, grabbed my duffel bag, and disappeared like a ghost. It wasn't dramatic. There was no rainstorm, no slow walk with sad music in my head. It was cold, efficient. I made a checklist. For once in my life, I had the upper hand. Mallory had no idea where I was. I didn't post a thing. No stories. No location tags. Nothing. Radio silence. That woman lives on social media like it's oxygen, so I knew it would drive her insane not knowing where I was. Or worse, who I was with. The answer was simple. I was with no one. But I wanted her to imagine I was. Instead of going back to our shared townhouse, I drove to my friend Warren's place. He's got this cabin just outside of town, quiet, no Wi-Fi, barely a signal. He's also the type of guy who doesn't ask questions. Just hands you a key and says, "Do what you gotta do, man." But before I drove out there, I made one important stop. Our house. I waited until I knew she was at work. Her schedule was always predictable. Mondays, she left early for meetings with the branding team. It was her favorite day to wear all beige and pretend she was the main character in some ad campaign. So I had a 4-hour window. I unlocked the door, walked inside, and paused. It didn't feel like my home anymore. There were throw pillows I didn't recognize. Candles that smelled like wood smoke and figure a new bookshelf filled with books she'd never read and aesthetic trinkets. Little stone hands holding crystals, fake plants in gold pots. Her space, not ours. I walked into the bedroom and opened the closet. Half of my clothes were already shoved into one corner like they were waiting to be dismissed. She hadn't even bothered to fold the laundry I left in the dryer last week. That was our thing. I did the laundry. She folded. I guess now it was just abandoned. I didn't take everything. Just what I needed. Important documents, my late father's watch, my laptop, a few shirts, my electric razor, and here's the part one don't regret. A small fireproof safe she didn't know I had. It contained a few surprises. You see, for the past 6 months, Mallory had been so focused on reinventing herself that she forgot I was quietly managing all our finances. The car lease? In my name. The joint savings? I'd moved most of it months ago after a weird conversation where she asked what would happen if we ever separated. She said it casually, like she was asking if I liked oat milk. But that night, I opened a solo account and started prepping. Just in case. I packed it all into the trunk of my car and left her a note on the fridge. You said you wanted a break. I'm honoring it. Don't call. Don't text. Let's see who you are without me. No threats. No insults. Just space. The one thing she claimed to want. I drove straight to Warren's cabin and turned off my phone for 2 full days. When I finally turned it back on, 32 missed calls, 15 texts, 3 voicemails, all from her. But none of them said sorry. The last message just said, "Where are you? You're acting insane. You're the one making this worse." I stared at that for a long time. Then I deleted it. She thought she could stage a public breakup and I'd just crawl back, maybe fight for her like some lovesick extra in a rom-com. Instead, I vanished. And what she didn't realize was, when you humiliate someone in front of an audience, they don't come back for applause. They leave the stage for good. I didn't respond to Mallory's calls or messages, but that didn't stop the universe from dragging her back into my orbit in the weirdest way possible. It started with a text from someone I barely knew, Madeline, one of the women from that awful brunch. She was the one in the red blazer, the loudest clapper when Mallory announced our break. Her text came 2 days after I'd gone completely dark. "Hey Curtis, just checking in. That brunch got kind of awkward, huh? Hope you're okay." That alone was strange, but what followed knocked the wind out of me. Between us, I didn't know she was going to say that. She told us it was a surprise announcement about a new project or something. Anyway, I think you deserve better. I read that message 5 times. What did she mean, a new project? The whole thing suddenly felt even more staged than I realized. Mallory hadn't just ambushed me. She'd marketed the ambush. Like it was a pitch meeting. A performance. And it started to make sense. Her dramatic tone, the clinking of the glass, the fake surprise on her friends' faces. Not everyone knew what was coming. And yet, some clearly did. Later that same night, another one of her friends, Genevieve, the quiet one who barely said a word at brunch, DM'd me on Instagram. Hope I'm not crossing a line, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm around. I always thought you were kind. Mallory's been different lately. That's when something inside me shifted. For weeks, I'd blamed myself for everything. Maybe I got too boring. Maybe I didn't evolve like she did. Maybe I was holding her back. But now I realized I wasn't crazy. I was just the guy who got pushed out so she could reinvent herself in front of her new little audience. It wasn't about needing space. It was about spectacle. Still, I didn't respond to either of them. I wasn't about to become the next gossip topic in their little brunch circle. But I'll admit, something about those messages made me feel not crazy. And then the next blow came. A friend of mine who worked near Mallory's office called me and said, "Hey man, don't want to stir the pot, but I saw your wife at the wine bar on Fifth last night. She was with some guy. Tall, skinny, beard. Looked like they were more than friends." My stomach sank. I didn't respond. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I knew it. I knew there was someone else. The pause wasn't about reflection or self-discovery. It was about having a clean excuse. A stage exit. And while I'd gone to a cabin with nothing but a duffel bag and my thoughts, she'd sprinted into someone else's arms. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. A day later, Mallory texted me again. This time, there was no sarcasm. No fake cheer. "Hey, I don't know what people are saying, but it's not true. Can we talk?" I didn't even know which lie she was referring to. The brunch? The just a friend guy? The way she was now telling people I blindsided her? Yeah, that part really got to me. Apparently, she had started rewriting the story, telling people I had stormed out like some controlling husband, that I'd ruined the brunch by making it about me, that I couldn't handle being left. That's what hit me hardest. Not the betrayal, not even the other guy, but the idea that she was repainting me as the villain. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't cruel. I never shouted, never embarrassed her, never denied her anything. I was always steady, maybe too steady. But now I was something new in her story. A roadblock, a burden, a man she had to shake off like dust. But what she didn't know was, I'd already taken steps she couldn't undo. The money was moved. The safe was gone. The lawyer had been called. And the day before, I'd filed something that would make her brunch announcement look like a footnote in her life story. Because if she wanted freedom, I was about to show her what that really looked like. And this time, it wasn't just space she'd get. It was silence. And consequences. She didn't know I'd already filed for divorce. Not separation. Divorce. The word itself made me feel like I was detonating a bomb. But it was the first time I'd taken real control in years. I filed it quietly through an attorney who worked out of an office above a laundromat. He didn't wear a tie. He didn't talk much. He just asked, "Are you sure?" And I was. Because this wasn't just about that brunch table, or even the man she was probably seeing behind my back. It was about a pattern. Years of being a placeholder in my own marriage. She didn't leave me to find herself. She left because she thought I wouldn't. 2 days after the papers were processed, I mailed a single envelope to our house. I didn't hand-deliver it. No warning. No emotional "let's talk." Just her name on the front in my handwriting and a simple typed letter inside. "You wanted freedom. I'm giving you paperwork to go with it." No yelling. No games. Just goodbye. I thought she'd ignore it for a while. Pretend it didn't matter. But then, her new fantasy cracked. On a random Thursday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, I played it. It was Genevieve again. Quiet voice. Nervous tone. "Curtis, I know this is weird, but I think you should know. Mallory's friend, Jason, the guy from spin class? Yeah, he's not who she thinks he is. I just saw him at a bar with another girl. Same exact lines. Same arm around the shoulder. Same stupid hat." I didn't feel triumphant. Not even a little. Just hollow. I didn't respond. What would I even say? Told you so. That's not who I am. At least, not out loud. The next morning, Mallory called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Left a voicemail this time. "Can you please just talk to me for 1 second? Everything's been blown out of proportion. I don't want to do this like this. Please." That word, please, it wasn't part of her vocabulary when she had the upper hand. It only came out when things slipped. I texted back one word. "Lawyer." That was it. Hours passed. Then came the final attempt. A long message. 3 paragraphs. She said she'd made a mistake. That the brunch had been stupid. That the way she'd handled it was immature. She admitted she was lost in her own narrative, whatever that meant. And then, the part that stuck with me. I wanted to be admired. I didn't realize I already was, by you. Quietly. Daily. That mattered more than I let on. Now I won't lie. That line did something to me. For a split second, the old memories tried crawling back in. The Sunday mornings we used to spend cooking pancakes and fighting over whose Spotify playlist to play. The way she once cried watching a movie because the couple reminded her of us. But I reminded myself, that version of her hadn't existed in a long time. I knew this message wasn't coming from the woman I married. It was coming from the woman who no longer had a backup plan. Because freedom felt different when no one was chasing you. And suddenly, she wanted to be caught again. Too late. The divorce clock was ticking. I'd already pulled my name off our accounts. The townhouse lease was in my name. She'd be getting a notice soon. She thought I'd leave her with space. I left her with responsibility. And now she wasn't texting to reconnect. She was texting because she finally realized the difference between a break and a breakup. And that I wasn't bluffing. I didn't plan to meet with anyone. I wasn't trying to dig through dirt or expose anything else. I thought I was done. I had moved my things, filed the papers, and started quietly adjusting to a life that didn't orbit around her moods anymore. But then Genevieve texted again. This time, she wasn't vague. No hints. No polite ambiguity. She wrote, I think you should see this. Not because I'm trying to start anything, but because I feel guilty. For laughing. For being part of it. I didn't know it had gone this far. She asked if I could meet her at the same cafe where the infamous brunch had happened. The irony wasn't lost on me. I almost didn't go, but something told me to show up. She was already seated when I walked in. No makeup. No performance. Just a plain black sweater and a tired look that mirrored mine. She slid her phone across the table like it was a weapon. I hesitated. She said, look or don't. But if I were you, I'd want the truth, even if it sucks. So I looked. Screenshots. Dozens. From the group chat Mallory had with her brunch friends. The same one I'd only seen snippets of before. But this wasn't weeks old. This was ongoing. The night I left, she'd messaged the group. I think he actually left. Like, left. He took his stuff and vanished. Is that normal? One of her friends wrote, OMG LOL wait he's being serious? Another added, let him stew for a bit. He'll come crawling back. Then, a few days later, things shifted. Mallory. So awkward. Jason's kind of ghosting me. I think he's back with his ex? Another friend. Wait, didn't you tell Curtis that you never liked Jason like that? Then silence. A few messages about work. Then something that turned my stomach. Mallory again. I told Curtis I miss him. Playing the long game now. I can fix this if I handle it right. Fix it. Like I was a spilled drink. A misstep in a dance she was still choreographing. Genevieve looked at me and said, I'm sorry. I didn't know how far she was spinning this until now. And I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I nodded, jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd crack a tooth. I asked her, why now? Why show me this? She hesitated, then shrugged. Because you were always nice. And you didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of a table full of women who were drunk on each other's approval. It hit me hard. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was theatrical. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She'd curated my downfall for claps and emojis. And now, with Jason gone and the group chat cooling, she was rebranding again, playing the remorseful ex-wife, trying to pivot the story like she always did, this time to make herself the real victim. But now I had proof, from her own friend. And suddenly, I saw the final crack in her armor. Her desperation wasn't about love. It was about image. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of herself she got to be when I was around. The stable, taken, dependable woman who got to pretend she was grounded while secretly craving chaos. And now, she was just Mallory. Alone. Exposed. Losing control of the story. I stood up to leave, and Genevieve stopped me with one final thing. She doesn't know I showed you this. I don't want drama. But if you ever decide to respond to her, make it count. I nodded. And as I walked out of that cafe, the same one I left weeks earlier humiliated and blindsided, I wasn't broken. I was ready. Because now it was my turn to control the narrative. She didn't know I'd seen everything. That was the part that made it almost poetic. She kept texting like I still lived in confusion, like I was pacing around wondering if I'd overreacted. She had no clue that while she was trying to rewrite the past, I was sitting on the director's cut, unedited. After my meeting with Genevieve, I went silent for another full week. Not a single response. Not even a read receipt. I knew what silence does to someone who's addicted to control. It eats them alive. And Mallory? She wasn't panicking because she missed me. She was panicking because she didn't know what version of me I'd become. The real twist came when she showed up at my storage facility. I was on shift, wearing my cheap gray polo, clipboard in hand, pretending I wasn't exhausted from replaying her messages in my head on loop. She didn't even say hello at first, just walked up to the front desk like a customer. Except her voice cracked when she spoke. "Can we talk?" I didn't nod. I didn't blink. I didn't invite her in. I just said, "Make it quick. I'm working." She took a deep breath, clearly rattled that I wasn't leaping into her arms or asking if she was okay. "I made a mistake," she said, voice trembling just enough to seem rehearsed. "The brunch was stupid. It was supposed to be lighthearted. I didn't mean to humiliate you." I stared at her. She kept going. I was caught up. My friends were in my head. And Jason, he was just a distraction. I didn't even like him. "You were always the one. You were my constant. And when you disappeared, I realized I didn't want that kind of freedom." Still, I said nothing. So she stepped closer. Too close. "You're still wearing your ring," she whispered. I looked down. I hadn't noticed. I wore it out of habit. But suddenly it felt like a dead weight. I slid it off, slowly, and set it on the counter between us. Her eyes welled up. Then, finally, I spoke. "Do you want me to lie to you? Or do you want the truth?" She looked confused. "What?" So I told her. Calmly. Softly. Like I was reading a weather report. "That group chat? Genevieve showed me. The night I left. The things you said. The way you laughed. The way you told them you could fix me like I was a campaign that went off-brand." Her mouth opened slightly. A flicker of fear. I wasn't done. "I saw the part where you call me boring. Predictable. A security blanket with a pulse. I saw the strategy meetings you turned our marriage into. The play-by-play of how to spin this, so you came out looking like the empowered heroine, and I came out looking like the bitter, abandoned husband." She started shaking her head, but I kept going. "I know about Jason ghosting you. About you scrambling to rewrite the story when your backup plan backed out. About how your friends started pulling away. About how you tried to reel me back and once you realized your solo act wasn't getting applause." Now she looked angry. Not sad. Angry. Because the one thing she couldn't stand was being stripped of her illusion. I lowered my voice. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry I didn't wait around long enough for you to reframe it." Silence. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she was too proud. And that's when I handed her a sealed envelope. The same kind my attorney had couriered to me the day before. Inside it, a summary of the divorce terms. Fair. Clean. Final. She looked down at it like it burned her fingertips. "I'm not going to fight," I said. "You already had the stage. I'm just stepping off it." She didn't respond. Just stood there. Not victorious. Not devastated. Just exposed. I walked past her, clipboard still in hand, and headed toward the back office. Right before I disappeared behind the door, I turned and said one last thing. "You got your freedom, Mallory. This is what it looks like when no one's watching." She didn't follow. She never came back to the facility again. It's strange how quiet the world feels when you stop waiting for someone to explain themselves. You stop checking your phone. Stop rehearsing conversations that never happen. You stop bleeding energy into someone who already decided you were disposable. After Mallory walked out of the storage facility with that envelope in her hand, something inside me settled. It didn't collapse. It didn't explode. It settled. I thought I'd feel angry, or triumphant, or numb. Instead, I felt light. I didn't see her again after that day. Not in person. No dramatic farewell. No midnight knock on my door. Just silence. A week later, my lawyer called to say she'd signed everything. No pushback. No revisions. Just her signature, like a quiet admission that the game was over. In the meantime, I stayed out at Warren's cabin a bit longer. No Wi-Fi. No mirrors to stare at while questioning my worth. Just old wood floors, strong coffee, and a weathered journal I found in one of the drawers. I started writing again. Not about her. About me. About things I hadn't let myself feel in years. The loneliness. The resentment. The tiny humiliations I laughed off because it was easier than standing up for myself. The way I let myself be edited out of my own life. Turns out, I'm not boring. I'm just quiet. There's a difference. I used to think peace was something you found through someone else. Now I know. It's what you build when everyone else leaves. I got a new apartment in the west end of town. Nothing fancy, just mine. I planted a small herb garden on the windowsill and bought a couch that I liked. Not one Mallory picked because it matched her Pinterest board. I reconnected with people I hadn't seen in years. Not the kind who ask, "What happened?" but the kind who just say, "Glad you're back." And one day, out of nowhere, I got a message from Genevieve. It was simple. "I hope you're doing okay. You didn't deserve how it played out. If you ever want to grab coffee, I owe you one that isn't served with public humiliation." I smiled. Not because I was eager, not because I was healed, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt seen without being used. We met up a week later. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who'd both witnessed something ugly and decided they didn't want to carry it anymore. She listened. I talked. Then I listened. And we laughed, the real kind. The kind that doesn't need an audience. It's been 5 months now. I still haven't blocked Mallory. I don't need to. Because when you truly move on, you don't run. You don't even look back. You just go where the peace is. And that's where I'm staying.